I wish somebody had told us that ahead of time, and ironically, when I was in Tampa, they were one room over and nobody ever connected us, because it just wasn't considered important, but now it was, especially as they heard that, the mountains were, 20,000 feet and that the weather was horrible and all these things. And so we tell them what we can do. And he goes, well, you guys are going to start doing a UW campaign, which is unconventional warfare. That's where you link up individual operational detachments or ODAs up with factions of the Northern Alliance, which were the allies that we were trying to coordinate with. So it went from there.
So, and I'm glad you brought up the 20,000 feet thing, because I had it in my notes. I wanted to ask you, in the movie, it's depicted that helicopters had never flown that high, and they weren't sure whether or not it could be done. Was that how it actually worked in real life, that you guys didn't know if the altitude was even workable?
Yes and no, but not for the reasons that you might think. So helicopters had flown that high. Chinook helicopters routinely fly at 25,000 feet in Alaska, right over the mountains there. They do the rescue mission at the top of that. It was at Mount McKinley, I think. And so it is possible, but using carrying a usable load, going the distance that we need to go as far as, because we had to trade off fuel for cargo, if you will, people. Right. And so the math didn't work out, and we're wearing supplemental oxygen, or how long is that going to last, per console for the people you got on board. So there's a lot of calculations that have to go into this that, really weren't operationally proven. I operated in Colorado all the time, but that's nothing compared to Afghanistan.
From 6th and Peabody with Yeehaw Beer and Old Smoky Moonshine. Glad you're with us for OutKick 360. Chad, OutKick.com/bet. OutKick.com/bet.
Let's win.
That's where you go to win. And with DraftKings, I am taking the underdog upset this week, the Cincinnati Bengals on the road in Buffalo. Bengals are poised to head straight back to where they were a year ago in the Super Bowl. And I buy into Joe Burrow, Jamar Chase, T. Higgins. This is an opportunistic defense facing an offense that will turn the football over. Josh Allen at times will make the magic show happen, and at other times tip passes and key breaks will go the defense's way. And I think Cincinnati, with an extra possession or two, comes out of this with a straight win in what is going to be a tight, physical, and really fun football game coming down to the wire. Give me Cincy on the road, and they advance to the AFC Championship game for the second consecutive season.
I hope you're wrong. I could totally see it happening, though, exactly how you laid it out there. Do you have another one, or are you just going with that
That's
one?
the only underdog I like this week. The home team's strong favorites, I believe, based on this. And I look, every year we will see a team that makes a run, right? Cincinnati of last year. Is that the New York Giants? It's likely the Cowboys, though, the team that is not the home favorite that goes. Did you see the ticket prices for that game, by the way?
I did not. In Santa Clara, or where they play?
Santa Clara. The cheapest ticket is $405. The most expensive is $18,000 for a divisional round matchup, Cowboys 49ers.
It's odd. That's crazy. It's odd to me when
That's straight from StubHub.
Santa Clara is like 45 minutes to an hour away from San Francisco. It's always weird when the team has the name of a city that's that far away. Buffalo Bills, same way. Orchard Park's probably a good 45 minutes, right? 30, 45 minutes from downtown Buffalo. So I know why it happens, but it's always weird to me. The Detroit Lions played in Pontiac, Michigan for years in the Silverdome, which was another place that was 30 to 45 minutes away from Detroit. Of course, now they play downtown.
Oh, you've got, Arizona playing in Glendale.
But at least Arizona's not Phoenix. Right? When they changed the name to the Arizona Cardinals, well, they could be anywhere. They could be in Tucson. That would make sense. The Carolina Panthers could be in any one of two states, and it would make sense. So it's when the name of the city doesn't align with the actual city the games are played in, that always weirds me out a little bit. I understand why. It's still weird.
Give me the Bengals outright winners this week over the Bills. Again, outkick.com/bet. Chad, you cashed in with Dylan Taylor, who gave you great advice on a big parlay that I was late to the party on last night. And you guys, was it a 4 or 5 leg?
Hutton got his haircut and was just completely out of commission on this.
Yeah.
So Dylan gave us one parlay that failed early. So Rutgers was a part of this parlay
so he doubled
against
back.
Michigan State. What I did was I doubled down on the second leg of that parlay on Maryland over Michigan -4.5, which was very close, but I won on that one. And then Dylan Taylor comes through with an absolute dime of a 4-leg parlay last night. And, of course, my internet's not working right now, so I'm going to find it eventually. But in the meantime, I'll tell you that it's a lot of mid-major. This is kind of mid-major madness with Dylan Taylor. And the bets that he gave me, here they are. So last night, Dylan says, take Southern Utah, money line, against New Mexico State.
Okay.
Southern Utah won 111-76. I'm not sure what they were favored by, but I bet they covered that spread also, not just the money line. He said take the over in FIU UTEP. The over was 133.5. UTEP 181.61. He said to take the under in USC Arizona.
Okay.
And that was 151.5. That game went under. And finally, La Tech -3.5 against Western Kentucky. Louisiana Tech won by 12 in that game. So what I did was, being someone who likes to ride a heater and likes to think of myself as somewhat intelligent, I'm going to ride the hot hand. I said, Dylan, come up with a winner for us tomorrow. So this has nothing to do with the NFL. But Dylan Taylor's parlay, if you want to play the hot hand right now, his big money bet of the night. This is I wouldn't call it a lock, but it's the one that you put the most money on. Richmond -1.5 at home against crosstown rival VCU. That's his one big bet. 4-game parlay. I love this. Buffalo +5.5 at home against Toledo. The under 169.5 in that Buffalo-Toledo game.
Okay.
Villanova St. John's under 151.5. And finally, Hutton, Ryder on the money line at home against Niagara. So this will be The first, and if I win, not the last time I place good money on Ryder to win a game.
Fair enough.
Ryder is, I believe, in Virginia. I know Radford is in Virginia. They were in the tournament last year. I think they were in a championship game at least.
Maybe Ryder will be this year.
Maybe Ryder's in Jersey. We're going to find that out now.
Worth betting on tonight, though, according to Dylan Taylor.
Doesn't matter. You know what?
Again, take the Bengals.
You know where they are? They're where a win's going to happen tonight because they're playing home against Niagara. And you don't go to Ryder and leave victorious very often. And that's what Niagara's going to find out tonight.
John McClain is going to join us in about 25 minutes. We will go through the headlines across the NFL. And coming up, we will kick off hour number 2.
Jersey.
With the headlines from the job interviews that are taking place with the openings across the NFL. News with the co-offensive coordinator in Michigan, Jaden Rashada, and Florida in the headlines today with some newsworthy info to pass along. Plus, the international games across the NFL, the league continues to load up with teams they're sending to Europe. We'll discuss and go through the possible opponents. And, Gonzaga, by the way.
Yeah.
They lost. We'll detail
it's a rarity.
All of that and more next.
College football's in trouble. There's a lot of people trying to keep it from happening.
I think it's a general consensus across the college football landscape. We want to play football.
College football is a huge part of the fall. It's a huge part of Americana itself.
It just really felt like people in the country needed college football to just feel a little sense of normal.
Big news from the Big Ten as the conference releasing its 10-game football schedule.
We go home thinking that we're going to be practicing the next day. Everybody gets a text, stay home, everything's canceled.
Big Ten fall football season has been canceled.
We just believe collectively there's too much uncertainty.
I guess what I'm trying to understand, though, Kevin, is that was the same position you had 6 days ago.
The Big Ten is an unmitigated disaster.
There was a ton of confusion. There was presidents saying one thing, there was coaches saying another.
Players had to be silent, coaches had to be silent, ADs had to be silent.
People said, how does what you just did make any sense?
And nobody really knew what the heck happened when they voted to cancel the season.
You make this huge historical announcement, and then Kevin Warren never does a press conference to explain it. It was like a masterclass in how not to handle a crisis.
The word really that was lacking in all of this is transparency.
It felt like a lot of stuff was happening behind closed doors.
Even today, we still don't know what occurred.
So you don't tell us parents, that's fine, but you're not telling the young men that it affects.
We have to make a decision to save the season. What about the history books? What about the rivalry games? What about Paul Bunyan's axe? How is that not going to go to a team this year?
This is a failure of epic magnitude. The Big Ten presidents and leaders should be held accountable for the disastrous decisions that they're making.
Then the commissioner doubles down, saying his decision will not be revisited.
And that's the point. It felt like a war was declared on the Big Ten and Kevin Warren.
Everything turned political.
Because if this is medical, then you would have stopped the game of football a long time ago.
I think the Big Ten leaders will tell you that they probably made a mistake in hindsight.
If I had the chance to do it all over last year, I would make the same decisions that we made.
Just like that, the second hour is here. OutKick 360 rolls on. Glad you're with us, Friday edition. Chad said that yesterday felt like a Saturday to him. So today, almost game day. Almost game day.
We're there. We're there. Today feels like Sunday. No.
Chad's headed to the mountains.
I am.
After this.
I am. I'm headed east to the Great Smoky Mountain National Park area. I believe technically we'll be staying in Sevierville, but it's right on the Pigeon Forge, Sevierville, Gatlinburg edge.
The home of Old Smoky.
Home of Old Smoky. I will be on top of Old Smoky this weekend. I will mount Old Smoky, and I will enjoy all of its...
Old Smoky Chad has entered you.
I will enjoy all of its fruits, all of the fermented fruits of Old Smoky this weekend in the birthplace of moonshine and the birthplace of Old Smoky moonshine. Got a little family reunion. This is the very late Christmas that we have with my mom's side of the family. They're actually watching right now, Hutton, in the cabins up in Sevierville, Pigeon Forge. So we say hello.
Yes, hello.
Hopefully they're all, I'll get a text
Chad
if they're
will drive
actually
safe.
still watching and paying attention. If they're not watching and paying attention, it's because they are playing this game called Train, and it is a card game. Hutton, that's the extent of my knowledge of it, other than the older people in my family will play this game for 14 hours straight. They will not stop. They love it so much.
It's like the World Series
You're
of poker.
keeping a score. Everybody's got their score sheets out. And, I mean, it is nonstop. And that's all I know about the game. I'm not a big card guy. Never have been one to sit down and play cards for any extended period of time.
What game do you go to?
I'm a big fan of Risk.
Okay.
Trivial Pursuit.
See, for me, it's cards.
Any trivia game. We usually have a family Trivial Pursuit game. That's died down a little bit in recent years, but it's usually young versus old in Trivial Pursuit. And now the young marker keeps creeping up. It's like 45 and below is on the young team, and then 45 or 50 and up. Whereas before it was like 25 and below was the young team. But we have a lot of fun with that. Trivial Pursuit, Risk, Monopoly. I'll play those games. I cannot get interested in playing cards.
Were you?
I feel like I'm rare for I feel like most guys like to have a poker game or play cards at some point.
Yeah, I feel like it was poker,
I have no
but
desire.
like growing up, that was like Uno.
We'll have a Withrow.
Rook.
Yeah, that's another one. Gin Rummy.
Yes.
Was one. But we have a Withrow men's camping outing twice a year, and it's always cards at night, around the campfire. And everyone wants to play cards, and I just don't play.
You're the dealer.
I just don't play. I'm the drinker. I just sit up around the fire and hey, you finished that? You done with that drink there? I'll go ahead and take that one down too. I just sit and talk and enjoy the camaraderie.
In the Wild
without playing
West,
cards.
Chad would be the guy that comes in and just turns the table over at the saloon.
Yes.
Screw your game.
I'm the Doc Holliday of a minus winning money playing cards.
Yes.
More of an old apothecary would be my role on these camping trips. I've got the monocle out, I'm ready to go. I'm like inspecting everything. People are eating and drinking the whole time. It's great.
Some of the coaching interviews scheduled for today or this weekend. The Giants offensive coordinator Mike Kafka, he is set for interviews on Sunday with the Colts, Panthers, and Texans. I don't know how you pull off all three of those. Clearly via Zoom, but that is quite the gauntlet the day after the Giants will be playing Philadelphia tomorrow evening. The Giants, their defensive coordinator, Wink Martindale, so they go from OC to DC. Wink Martindale interviewing as well with Indianapolis on Sunday. And 49ers defensive coordinator DeMeco Ryans, he's with the Broncos today. He'll be with, he was the Broncos yesterday. He will beat the Texans today ahead of their matchup against the Cowboys. I've often thought this stretch run, if you're a coordinator or you're in some cases, position coach that gets the opportunity to interview, I don't know how you keep up and try to balance both things and do both things well. Either interview well, especially if you're a first or second time interviewer, or interviewee, I should say, when you're going through it for the first or second time. I don't know how you balance preparing for a playoff game while also preparing for the interview that could get you one of 32 head coaching jobs in the NFL.
I just don't think there's any way to do it and give it justice. Like do the due diligence of what it would take to get ready for an interview, to know the ins and outs of an organization and have really thoughtful answers to personnel and different strategies and things like that. I mean, I feel like if you're a coordinator in today's NFL and you're getting all these looks for a head coaching job and they're trying to interview you during a playoff run, I mean, you almost just have to say, I mean, look at my body of work, look at our offense, tell me if you like that. And then the interview process has to be really simple in that you're just getting a sense of whether or not I can speak when spoken to and communicate with people. Because outside of that, I'm not going to spend if you're a coach in the NFL and your team's in the playoffs, how could you justify spending any amount of time or headspace on preparing, looking at another team's roster and getting ready for an interview for a team that's not in the playoffs? I just don't think you can. So, I mean, I'd be happy to meet and have a conversation so you can tell if you like me or not. I can tell if I like you. But outside of that, my answer as a coordinator would be look at my team, look at my body of work, look at my career, ask people about me. Outside of that, I'm going to speak to you, but I'm not doing any preparation because I'm paid to be the offensive coordinator or the defensive coordinator for this playoff team. So I'm not taking my attention away from that.
All of the general manager positions have been filled, but where we stand now, head coaching openings in the NFL, Broncos, Cardinals, Colts, Panthers, Texans. You got 5 of those. There are now 8 offensive coordinator positions and roles open. Buccaneers, Ravens, Chargers, Titans, Patriots, Jets, Rams, and Commanders. And defensive coordinator, Dolphins, Vikings, and Falcons. It was a gauntlet of firings for OCs across the NFL. How many of these teams will promote from within versus hire from the outside in? But finding that offensive-minded coach to be the new play caller of 8 new teams, that's now to me, the significant hires that are about to be made. I think we kind of know Sean Payton, whenever he makes his decision, he's meeting with Carolina today in New York. After that, it feels like DeMeco Ryans is going to get one of these jobs. Rich Bisaccia actually interviewed recently with the Colts. Colts are interviewing a ton of candidates. But Chad, the next wave that really affects the playoff push for some decent teams, Chargers, Titans, Patriots, Jets, Commanders, Ravens, offensive coordinator, and the new play caller for these veteran quarterbacks on these current rosters.
Yeah, I mean, I think that's going to be a huge decision for a lot of these teams. I'm always interested in what's the style, what's the hot route people want to go, hot route that they want to go with offense, and who are they mimicking? It's a copycat league at all times, but what is the in vogue thing to do and the direction to go and the family tree you want to go with? With coaching, it's been Sean McVay.
It still has been.
Anyone to touch with Sean McVay, that's the direction you go. And also that offensive system. Are we going to break away from that? I think that Cliff Kingsbury and his failure with the Cardinals isn't going to inspire many college hires of an air raid disciple anytime soon in the NFL, as an example. So failure can begat non-hires from that family tree, where success can begat other hires. I think of what's happened in Minnesota based on the Sean McVay tree, right? Mike McDaniel with Kyle Shanahan. Now you've got a 49ers disciple as the general manager in Nashville with the Titans with Rand Carthon. So who are you rating? What ideas do you really want? What organizations make the most sense that you want to copycat? That's an ever-evolving animal in the NFL, and we're going to see what that looks like now with these coordinator hires.
Well, and I think what we're going to see is the shift of attention and focus to the NFC East. You know, the attention has been on the NFC West and was going to be the AFC West this season. In the NFC East, and if you think about Shane Steichen in Philly, Mike Kafka, who came from Kansas City, joined Brian Daboll in New York, and so it's Daboll's offense, but it's Mike Kafka that's also collaborating there and that's calling plays. And he left because Eric Bieniemy seemingly is never going to leave unless it's going to be for another OC job as he continues to interview. But he came back. Kafka went with Daboll to New York, and so you've got the two of the top teams in the NFC East that are going to have their OCs, and in some cases their quarterback coach or their wide receiver coach interviewing for some positions to call plays. Also, did you see the headline where Lamar Jackson John Harbaugh said Lamar Jackson will be involved in the interview process for the offensive coordinator
That's
search.
so stupid.
They're just handing everything over to him.
I just think that's so stupid. Lamar Jackson seems like a really good dude. He's a great quarterback. I get all that. That's the coach's job to hire the offensive coordinator. We're really blurring the lines here. And it's the coach's job to know what works best for his quarterback and go find a coordinator that works for his quarterback. And I would have no issue with a coach calling the quarterback and saying, hey, we're thinking about these guys. What do you think? And then asking for feedback. But bringing in Lamar Jackson or any quarterback to be in on the interview process is just dumb to me. Maybe I'm wrong. It's a new era, I guess.
I mean, it's placating to the guy that you don't want to be disgruntled. You know, because they've also said there's a 200% chance he's back. They look forward to getting the negotiations going again. That was from Eric DeCosta. Harbaugh is saying he's going to be involved in the OC process. I guess if you're going to extend him with the big money, you want him involved in some regard to the interview process. Not the interview, but the line of thinking of where you're going after you're moving on from, you know, from what you've had and where you've been. But it's more collaboration with him, I think, just to make sure that he feels like he's the face of the organization. He already is.
It's also a good way of completely belittling your offensive coordinator from the start, when technically you're the guy's boss as the coordinator over a quarterback, and now that guy's interviewing me for the job. I'm having to grovel and be interviewed by the guy that I'm going to be asked to tell what to do and what plays to call, and he's supposed to run those plays no matter what. That's an odd spot to put that offensive coordinator in from the very beginning. Here's what I want Lamar Jackson to have: veto power. I think that's fair. Bringing him in on the interview process is very strange to me. But if I'm Lamar Jackson and I am just adamant, I don't want this guy for this reason, because of the offense he runs, because of the work he's done with another quarterback I know well, or whatever. If you're strongly against a hire being made, that quarterback should have some veto power. That's where you give them say. But being in on every interview and in on that process, I think is too much.
Chad, Gonzaga, 76 straight home wins, and it came to an end last night. And the power of Twitter allows us to flip on and you see the layup that allows for the upset. I wish I was watching this game live. I wasn't. Were you?
Well, this is your time of night to watch a game, too. I was not watching it. I saw Twitter where people said that the winning streak was over at home for Gonzaga. And, I mean, look, it's 76-game home winning streak. They can't get a lot of big-time opponents to go there and play. So they have feasted on West Coast Conference opponents, and they've feasted on conference games for years now. It's an impressive streak. I'd be more impressed if, you know, all of their big marquee non-conference games are typically true road games or neutral court for the most part. I want to see more people go out there and play them. You know, we don't see that as much. We see it some, but not that much. I'd like to see the Blue Bloods go to Spokane and play Gonzaga more often.
It feels like, though, we're closer to that than we've ever been with some of the scheduling across college basketball early on. Scheduling this year was awesome.
Yeah, I think you have to really work hard to not play a tough schedule if you're one of the Power 5 schools.
Yeah.
I do think that, because you're going to get into a tournament or two where you're going to play somebody. I mean, these schools that end up going 12, 13-0 in the non-conference that play no one, that to me seems harder to do now than to just have a couple, 2, 3, 4 big games in your non-conference schedule.
Jaden Rashada has been granted his release from Florida. The Gators have released him, the 5-star QB who signed his letter of intent, then wanted out. NIL negotiations, the first open holdout in college football in regards to name, image, likeness. He has now opened up his recruiting yet again. Who knows? Maybe Ole Miss lands him. They're landing everyone else. Every other quarterback's going there.
I mean,
he originally committed to Miami last June, and at the time he committed over Florida, Ole Miss, A&M. There was one other, LSU. Maybe LSU goes after him now because they've got Walker, who just went to Ole Miss.
Well, he's going to have to get paid. We know that wherever he goes, and that was probably going to be the case. Anyway, we had Shannon Terry in earlier this week. He said something that was very, very interesting to me. He said that Get out of your mind that these guys are picking schools based solely off of NIL. They're simply the top elite guys are picking from a pool of NIL schools. So that narrows the list down. They're only deciding amongst schools where they're going to get paid NIL money, right? That's not the sole determining factor for many of these guys. And I believe that. Now, I also think there are some that it probably does just come down to NIL. And even if it's, 20,000 more, they want to go to the highest bidder no matter what. I don't think it's that often, but I do think that probably happens with some prospects. I'm just interested to see where this ends now with Rashada, with the Gator Collective. Does he go quietly and just not get paid and go somewhere else? Is there a lawsuit filed? Does this affect Florida with other recruits? Does this affect the Gator Collective's mindset and how they handle their money and what they promise to recruits? Because if the reports of $13 million for 4 years are true, that is way too much money. Shannon Terry sat there and told us that he doesn't even believe it. They would have been so dumb to offer him that. But that's multiple reports saying there's a signed contract that said that the Gator Collective tried to get out of. The Gator Collective hurt their football program in this. No other way around it. Whatever happened.
Perception is reality.
Perception is reality, and they lost a blue-chip quarterback, and they needed one badly in this class, given, their other backup quarterback is going to prison, and then they had another guy leave, and they've got now Graham Mertz. No one's excited about that for 1 year. So it's a tough spot right now for Florida.
Coming up, John McClain will join us. We'll dive into the matchups for the divisional round. Hit the coaching interview headlines as well. John McClain, Gallery Sports, joins us next on OutKick 360.
As we move past the college football regular season, the postseason, and the playoff championship game, is there, are we going to see, in your opinion, are we going to see the same storyline going into next year, you think, with the same teams? And I'm talking, okay, Bama, Georgia, two teams that are looking for a new quarterback, by the way, in Bama and Georgia. Ohio State is as well. Michigan's going to return J.J. McCarthy. Harbaugh, this NFL nonsense saga comes to an end for another year yesterday. Do you think it's trending towards where, okay, with the playoff expansion coming up too, okay, we got our 4 or 5 teams, you know what I mean? Maybe Clemson gets back in there, there's a few other, but do you feel like Kirby Smart has set himself up now where he's running a dynasty at Alabama, at Georgia, along with Nick Saban trying to run his own dynasty at Alabama?
Yeah, I think that was probably the takeaway that everybody had. Every podcast that I listened to after the game, every column that I read, and certainly what I wrote and what I said on my own show, I think we're there, man. And, I think what stands out is, one, it goes like, I think it's easy. And I was one of the people that was critical of Kirby Smart pre-national championship game last year, but they've been elite for about 5-6 years now. I looked up the stat. I can't remember it. I think it was since that title game run in 2018, outside of the COVID year, I think they've won at least 11 games every year. Now, they couldn't get over the hump, and part of it was they ran into really good teams. They ran into a historically great LSU team in 2019. 2018, they obviously had Bama on the ropes in the SEC title game. And so now they're there, but they're there with the confidence of knowing that they can beat anybody in college football. And so it is kind of amazing. They went in an 18-month span from the team that you expected to find a way to lose the big game to now, I think they're the best big game team in college football. You look at their season, what were their best performances? The national championship game, a season opener against Oregon when we all still had questions of all the talent that they lost, the Tennessee game when Tennessee came in number 1 in the country. And so I think we're there. And then I would also add, I would also say being there, and one of the reasons I was so excited this game was in LA, because I host radio on Saturdays, I don't get to cover a lot of games during the season. Just to be around Kirby Smart, to be around those players, I think that standard has been set. And Kirby said it himself. He's like, the biggest thing for us right now is complacency, because we have a chance to be really good again next year as well. So I think they go into next year. I think they should be the favorite. Every sports book I've seen, they are the favorite. But I do think there's some other interesting storylines now that Jim Harbaugh is back with J.J. McCarthy as you said, for one more year. I think this could be it. He's never going to say it publicly, but he's got his quarterback. Ohio State's young, games at home against Ohio State. And then, like you said, moving parts at Ohio State, Alabama, Penn State's interesting with maybe a quarterback upgrade, even though they lose Sean Clifford. So I'm excited already about the narratives. But yeah, if you told me on the day of selection Sunday that Georgia's the number 1 seed, 13-0 off an SEC championship, I wouldn't be surprised by that at all next December.
Aaron, when's the, we've talked about this before. When's the Harbaugh mess just come to an end? I know you just said next year, but man, we cover this sport and we hear things and we hear stuff coming out of the NFL and we hear Harbaugh's interest, and he has interest. Look, if there was a job that was really offering him, and I mean a set in stone offer to leave, I think he would not be the coach at Michigan right now.
Live from 6th and Peabody with Yeehaw Beer and Old Smoky Moonshine. Glad you're with us. Hutton and Withrow and John McClain. GallerySports.com.
John McClain
joins us. Time to preview the divisional round across the NFL. Head coaching interviews. The Titans have introduced their new general manager and more. John, hope you're doing well, man.
Guys, I'm doing great. If I was any greater, it'd be illegal, and I hope you are too.
Same here.
John, I hope you get into something illegal this weekend, honestly. Just go ahead.
Do something illegal.
Yeah, I mean, you're feeling so good right now. Let's just go ahead and break a few laws this weekend. No problem.
Yeah, my wife is out of town.
The perfect
It'd
time
be
to break
the time
laws.
to do it.
Yeah. Wives are always telling us not to break the law, and it really brings us down. So, yeah, break the law this weekend, John. We give you permission. Go ahead.
John, this is your favorite weekend of the year because of the divisional matchups. Traditionally, the most competitive games across the board in the NFL. Which game can you not wait to kick off?
Truthfully, I'm excited about all of them, but as anybody from Texas and somebody who's been covering the NFL as long as I do, it's the Cowboys at the 49ers. I was at the catch. Dwight Clark made his great catch, streaking across the back of the end zone from Joe Montana. I was actually standing behind the end line. The media was on the sidelines, ready to go to the dressing room afterward. I was wearing a long coat, and I didn't weigh quite as much as I do now. And I've tried to show my wife, that's me. No, that's not you. And but that is me back there, caught in a crowd of people. And when I watched Dwight Clark run in front of me, I asked my columnist, I said, where the bleep? And boom, Clark caught it. Some people still think he was trying to throw it out of the end zone. Of course, Montana doesn't say that. And it was the moment that changed the 49ers franchise. And I remember another time when I was getting married for the first time. It was a rehearsal dinner in Waco, and I wouldn't go in. I was in the car listening to the 49ers and the Cowboys play in the playoffs, and the Cowboys were getting beat until their kicker, Tony Fridge, executed the greatest onside kick in history. As a former soccer player in Austria, he went up, he planted his left foot on the other side of the ball and brought his right foot behind his left calf and kicked the onside kick back to the left. They covered. Roger Staubach pulled out a miracle before the Hail Mary in Minnesota in 75. And that was an incredible victory. They owned the 49ers in the playoffs back then. Now the 49ers have won the last 2 playoff games. Cowboys have won the last 3 regular season games. D'Amico Ryans, who I know very well, 49ers defensive coordinator, who is interviewing today with the Texans for the head coaching job. I would love to see him and Kyle Shanahan and another former group of Texans assistants win this game.
What can this run do for the perception of Dak Prescott?
This time last week, everybody's doing this, just wringing their hands. They're so worried about which Dak is going to show up, good Dak or bad Dak. And he'd been the bad one. And then he came out and played one of the greatest games in history, 4 touchdown passes, 1 rushing. And he's tremendous. He's such a class act. Other than the fact he plays for the Cowboys, I think most people would pull for him because he's been a really good guy, ambassador for the Cowboys in the game. I was happy for him. And I do believe with the Cowboys having the second most sacks and the most turnovers, they're going to get all over Brock Purdy. The key is they have to get a lead and take the 49ers running game out of the equation so they can get after him. But nobody's been able to do that because the 49ers have a tremendous running game.
John, who do you have more faith to play big in this big moment, Brock Purdy or Dak Prescott, even given Dak's performance last week?
Well, I think Cadillac, beyond a shadow of a doubt, it'd be Prescott because he's been in this situation more. There's nothing Brock Purdy did at Iowa State, except maybe when he got beat by Baylor, anything of this magnitude. And people keep expecting him to have a bad game or be in a situation where they can't run the ball and he has to throw it all the time. And people are trying to make excuses like, well, he threw that short pass to McCaffrey or Deebo Samuel and they went the distance. All quarterbacks do that. The kid's been incredible. 6-0 as a starter, played almost a full game the first time he came off the bench. When Jimmy Garoppolo got hurt, he's got a good chance, he should, of being Rookie of the Year. I think he'll finish 3rd in the voting for Offensive Rookie of the Year. And he's been tremendous. And people think, well, they'll trade Trey Lance. They're not going to trade Trey Lance. Jimmy Garoppolo's leaving. They're not going to have Brock Purdy, after half a season, say beyond a shadow of a doubt, he's the starter. They'll have some great competition in camp next year between Purdy and Lance, who Kyle Shanahan paid dearly for.
Here's why I even asked the question, John. It's a kind of a believe it when I see it type thing. I've seen Dak Prescott fail in the NFL in big moments many, many times. We've yet to see that with Brock Purdy. As crazy as it sounds, and it's a very small sample size, the dude is batting 1,000 right now in big moments. And every time I think that, oh, now he's going to look like Mr. Irrelevant in this game, he's making unbelievable play after unbelievable play. It's been remarkable watching this guy so far. Now, also acknowledge, could be a very different challenge with this Cowboys defense on Sunday.
Cowboys defense allowed the fewest points in the league, best defense by far in the playoffs. But the Cowboys got a pretty good big play defense themselves. 49ers got to run the ball, keep Purdy out of long situations. You know, he moves really well to wait for receivers to get open. He's done a good job of finding them. He doesn't throw balls where you go, oh my God, why did he do that? Kyle Shanahan and the unsung hero, first-year quarterback coach Brian Greasy, who was in the media with ESPN. Kyle Shanahan hired him to coach quarterbacks. Kyle coaches a starter, so Greasy started coaching a rookie, and he has done a tremendous job without getting any credit. And a lot of credit goes to Greasy, and no telling how much this will help him end up with an offensive coordinator's job at some point. Now, Purdy, I admire the heck of what he's done, but there was no quarterback last weekend under more pressure than Prescott was, and he came through. People say, well, Purdy's under a lot of pressure. No, he's not. He's a rookie. You know, if he throws 5 interceptions, nobody's going to be mad at him. He's met the expectations and gone beyond. I think the quarterback this weekend who has the most pressure on him is Josh Allen. He's at home. He's favored. He had 3 turnovers in the last game, 2 interceptions, fumble return for a touchdown. I think that Josh Allen has got more pressure on him this week than any quarterback in the divisional round.
John, I'm betting heavy the Bengals over the Bills. You can go ahead and tell me I'm an idiot.
You're not an idiot. A lot of people are riding with the Bengals. They're playoff tested. They've played under pressure last year. They've got the winning streak going. But what worries me, when you have 3 starters out in your offensive line, that hurts. That hurts the running game, and their running game hasn't been good lately. It hurts the pass protections. Fortunately, Joe Burrow's got 3 really good receivers, but man, nobody knows more than the Titans what can happen when you have not just one injury in the offensive line or 2, when you have multiple injuries and what that effect can have. I picked in my column for gallerysports.com, I picked the 4 home teams because I couldn't pick an upset. I thought, well, the Cowboys, yeah, they can pull an upset. Somebody said the Jaguars, they're out of miracles. That dream's going to die at Arrowhead Stadium. And then I thought, if the Bengals were at full strength, I might pick them, but I went with the Bills. But if the Bengals win, I will not be surprised.
There's always a surprise, though, this weekend. It's tough to beat a team 3 times in a single season. What chance do you give the Giants over the Eagles?
A lot of people are picking the Giants because the Giants have a lot of heart. They have a lot of guts. They don't have a lot of talent. I think that the Eagles haven't played real well. And it's because Jalen Hurts missed 2 games. Then he came back and he was rusty. Well, now he's healthy. They've got the highest scoring team in the playoffs. They've got a good defense, great balance between the run and the pass. And I think Jalen Hurts will run. This is the first time we've ever had a game with 2 quarterbacks with at least 600 yards rushing during the season competing against each other in playoffs. Brian Dable's going to be coach of the year, but I think Philadelphia has that bye and the home field advantage for a reason. Great wide receivers. The pass rush, 70 sacks, 4 players in double figures. The only team in history that had more sacks was the Bears in 2 seasons. I think Philadelphia is going to send them home with a sweep.
My biggest question is, if this is even going to be a game in the fourth quarter, is can Daniel Jones repeat that performance we saw in Minnesota against this Eagles defense? What about that, John? Are you buying Daniel Jones right now? Clearly, he's going to be the guy moving forward for the Giants, and he played well this season, but what's your level of faith in Daniel Jones right now?
I have a lot of faith in him, but his play caller, Mike Kafka, the offensive coordinator, plus his head coach, Brian Dable, but they made his running such a prominent part of the game plan to win that first game over Minnesota. And I think that they're not going to catch the Eagles by surprise. The Eagles will be ready for him on the run-pass options to fake the handoff. Instead of pass, he keeps it. I think that gives them free reign to hit him a lot. And their defense is great. You know, they want to contain the run and force him to pass so those linemen can get after him. And I think the Eagles could win this game handily. And because I think it wouldn't bother me to see the Eagles and the Chiefs or the 49ers and the Chiefs, because the 49ers and the Chiefs would be great offense, great defense. But I wouldn't have a problem with the Eagles, and they are hot right now. They got a lot to prove because people have been denigrating them because of the way they played down the stretch, but there was a pretty good reason. They did not have their quarterback. And you guys know in Nashville, all the bad that can happen when you don't have your quarterback.
A year ago, Joe Burrow in year 2 had his huge moment going to Arrowhead and winning the AFC Championship game and getting to a Super Bowl. Are we about to witness Trevor Lawrence's big moment in Arrowhead in this game in year 2 as the Jags quarterback?
I don't buy it. It's not, it was a great victory. It was more of a choke job by the Chargers than it was. I'm not taking away from the comeback, but when you blow a lead like that, you contribute a lot to it. And Lawrence picks up where he left off in that game. It'll be a great shootout between him and Patrick Mahomes. But if he plays anything like he did in the first half when he threw his 4 interceptions before the touchdown pass at the end of the first half, they're going to get stomped. I think as I said earlier, the dream dies. I think the Chiefs are good. I think the Chiefs, because of Mahomes, going to be the MVP. Andy Reid wins this game. He'll be only coach in history with more playoff victories than Andy will be. Bill Belichick. I think it's going to be fun, but I look for the Chiefs to win this one handily like they did during the regular season.
John McClain with us on OutKick 360. John, how realistic is Houston as a possible spot for Sean Payton?
I've had two people really close to him tell me that he wanted to be here. But, you got to pay $20 million a year. The only coach that's in that neighborhood is Bill Belichick. Payton's worth it if he can get it, but I don't hold it against the Texans or anybody if they don't give him $20 million a year. You also have to have compensation. It's a first-round pick for Payton from the Texans. Word is they want 2 first-round picks. I'm guessing that's from Carolina. Why they would even allow him to interview with Carolina is beyond me, because if he goes to the Panthers and they got a lot of pieces in place and they get a quarterback, then they're going to rule that division, and it's not going to be the Saints. This time next year, I think the Saints will be looking for a head coach. And Payton has told his friends he likes the fact they've got 11 picks, 2 number ones this year, 10 picks, 2 number ones. Next year, they have a lot of cap space to spend on veteran free agents. He would have control, but it wouldn't be in his contract. Nick Caserio would still have final say, but they said Payton wants a GM he can work with. And Caserio's not an egomaniac. He worked well with Lovie Smith and David Culley, according to them. So I don't know if they're going to get him. People here want DeMeco Ryans in a landslide because he's one of the best and most popular players in franchise history. And they're seeing him every weekend with a great defense, and they're going to see him again this weekend. And I hope his interview goes well by Zoom today, and they bring him in for an in-person interview next.
So do you think it's one of the two that's the next head coach there?
Nationally, they think it's going to be Eagles defense coordinator Jonathan Gannon. He interviewed 2 times last year. Lovie Smith got promoted. Obviously, he didn't hold it against the Texans because he's interviewed again. I know they like him. Because they had a defensive coach, I'm leaning toward an offensive coach. And Shane Steichen, Eagles offensive coordinator, calls plays, got the most balanced offense in the NFL. He's done well and Jalen Hurts he's not tall, but he's not small. But he knows how to use a mobile quarterback. And if they get Bryce Young, he's a mobile quarterback. So I wouldn't have a problem with Steichen, Gannon, if it's not DeMeco Ryans or Sean Payton.
Look at this through Sean Payton's eyes, John, if you will. We had this exercise yesterday. Give me your 1, 2, and 3 desired destinations if you're Sean Payton, of the ones that are possible that's out there. If the money's equal in these spots, where would you want to go based on quarterback setup or high draft pick or whatever criteria you want to throw in there?
Denver can offer the most money because of the Walmart money. He's got George Payton as the GM. There was a lot of thought he was going to Arizona because he could bring his own GM with him. They hired Monty Austin for it. Here they got Nick Caserio. Carolina, they have Scott Fitterer. I think that if all of them offered him $20 million a year, Carolina needs the least. They can run the ball. They have a good defense. If maybe Tom Brady's going to go there. Mike Florio has written 1 million times on Pro Football Talk that Peyton and Brady were going to Miami last year. And then before the Brian Flores lawsuit, and then the league took away the Dolphins' number 1 pick, so it must have been true. So Brady's contract is up. If Peyton goes to Carolina, will he bring Tom Brady as his quarterback, and both of them dominate a division with their former team? So I'd say the Panthers.
John, a headline from Mike Florio reads, the NFL is telling us without telling us that neutral site conference championships may become the norm. What do you think about the idea of the NFL going to this format full time and not just having a Super Bowl on a neutral site, but both conference championship games being neutral site as well?
That's been kicked around for quite a while. The league's always been against it. So what? They sold 50,000 tickets to the state Mercedes-Benz Stadium because they have the Bills and the Chiefs. I like the fact that you spend 18 weeks at 17 games to get home field advantage. It ought to count for something besides a bye. Maybe I'm just old fashioned, but I like the way it's set up now. And the home team doesn't always win, as we saw last year with Kansas City. So I like it the way it is. I don't want to diminish winning a conference championship.
I'm with you, John. What do you make of the Rand Carthon hire here in Nashville, coming from San Francisco? He had the introductory press conference earlier today, where he will. The key word and phrase they used was collaboration with both he and Mike Vrabel, and we still don't know who has final say over personnel.
Well, first of all, you never want an owner to have final say over personnel, because no owner knows enough to pick between the two. If you have big disputes of something, that's when you may have to go to the owner. I saw that here with Rick Smith and Bill O'Brien. As soon as O'Brien was hired in 2014, he tried to get personnel away from Rick Smith, and eventually he got it away from his successor, Brian Gain. And if it's a guy like say Kyle Shanahan, Andy Reid, Sean Payton in New Orleans, Pete Carroll, Bill Belichick, those guys all have final say on personnel. I see people, oh man, John Lynch did a great job getting him. And John Lynch scouted him, but Kyle Shanahan made the decision. And if I'm Rand Cawthorn, whose name, because of his dad, Maurice Cawthorn, he's been in the football family his whole life. He's been in the NFL since he's 25 or 26. He's had an opportunity to interview, and I've talked to people in the 49ers organization, most of them come from the Texans, about DeMeco Ryans. And when I talked to them this week after they hired him, they were very complimentary. They said it was just a matter of time before he was hired as a general manager, just a matter of who was it going to be.
John, enjoy the weekend. We can't wait for kickoff starting tomorrow, and we'll recap with you next week.
I'm like you guys. I'm pumped about this weekend. Night before these games, I can't sleep. I'm like a kid on Christmas morning, and I look forward to talking to you guys again next week. Thank you very much. Nice seeing you.
Always great having you on, John. Enjoy breaking those laws this weekend.
Yeah, that's
Thanks,
right.
buddy.
GallerySports.com. We should have asked him, Mattress Mac, where the big bet money was this weekend. Just follow that.
Well, I mean, Mattress Mac is the big bet money. He just, whatever he places, that's
what I want to know.
He's moving Vegas one way or the other.
I want to know what line he changed.
Yeah. Which, this game went from 4.5 to 4. So that's how we know what Mattress Mac was betting.
Yeah, he did. Coming up, more headlines. We've got the Michigan co-offensive coordinator who is out based on the investigation and charges his way. And the Ivan Provorov story from yesterday that we hit, and it's been dominating the NHL headlines. It all comes down to the attention that we as the sports media is putting on of these nights. Every night at an arena across their league, people are keeping attendance, keeping roster status on who's coming out and who's not during warm-ups. We'll discuss that.
We honor the indigenous people of North America next on OutKick 360.
No one's showing up to watch warm-ups. The media is there to keep attendance.
Yep.
That's next on
Roll
OutKick 360.
Call.
And how long after 9/11 does your unit, the 160th SOAR, which is the most elite helicopter pilots in the world, how long does it take for you guys to figure out, okay, a plan's being set in motion, we're going to Afghanistan? Was it within days? Was it within weeks?
It was within hours.
Within hours.
So we drive back that night, the battalion commander and I, and the next morning I'm sent down in a 15-passenger van with a bunch of other planners to Tampa, Florida. And we're to plan America's response, as far as the rotary wing side of it. And by October 3rd, I was in the country of Uzbekistan preparing to do personnel recovery for the bombing campaign that was about to kick off.
And this is depicted in the movie 12 Strong. Correct me if I'm wrong, where you guys are going to fly in from Uzbekistan. This is what's known as the horse soldiers. This is going to kind of be the first wave. Is that correct?
That is correct, yeah. So initially we're there for, I want to say about 2 weeks of bombing. And then there is no further plan that we know of. And then all of a sudden, 5th Special Forces Group rolls in. Their commander takes over the task force. We're in Task Force Dagger out of K2 Air Base, Karshi Kanabad, and he wants a briefing on our capabilities.
And so we sat down and we started talking to him about, the mountains and the distances that we can or can't fly, the way the weather is and all these things. And he's like, gee, I wish somebody had told us that ahead of time, and ironically, when I was in Tampa, they were one room over and nobody ever connected us, because it just wasn't considered important, but now it was, especially as they heard that, the mountains were, 20,000 feet and that the weather was horrible and all these things. And so we tell him what we can do. And he goes, well, you guys are going to start doing a UW campaign, which is unconventional warfare. That's where you link up individual operational detachments or ODAs up with factions of the Northern Alliance, which were the allies that we were trying to coordinate with. So it went from there.
So, and I'm glad you brought up the 20,000 feet thing, because I had it in my notes. I wanted to ask you, in the movie, it's depicted that helicopters had never flown that high, and they weren't sure whether or not it could be done. Was that how it actually worked in real life, that you guys didn't know if the altitude was even workable?
Yes and no, but not for the reasons that you might think. So helicopters had flown that high. Chinook helicopters routinely fly at 25,000 feet in Alaska, right over the mountains there. They do the rescue mission at the top of that. That was at Mount McKinley, I think. And so it is possible, but using carrying a usable load, going the distance that we need to go as far as, because we had to trade off fuel for cargo, if you will, people. Right. And so the math didn't work out, and we're wearing supplemental oxygen, or how long is that going to last, per console for the people you got on board. So there's a lot of calculations that have to go into this that, really weren't operationally proven. I operated in Colorado all the time, but that's nothing compared to Afghanistan.
Coming up, Withro's Neighborhood Turf Wars. OutKick 360
It's happening
rolls
today.
on.
We teased it 2 days ago.
There will be blood.
And it's happening today. I would not bring anything from my personal life to the show unless it was absolutely show worthy. And what is taking place in my neighborhood in a suburb of Nashville, Tennessee right now is nothing short of what we saw Daniel Day-Lewis go through in Gangs of New York with Leonardo DiCaprio. That's what's about to square off in my hood very
rabbits.
soon. We'll explain.
It's happening.
Butcher Bob the Butcher?
Bill.
Buffalo Bill? Bill the Butcher?
Bill the Butcher.
Bill the Butcher, that's it. I know if I said enough nicknames,
Don't
eventually
you
it'd
quiz
come
me
to
on DiCaprio film.
Yes, that's true.
You can quiz me on these posts from Facebook later.
Yes, this will be fun.
I feel like there's going to be, we need like slap fighting happening in your neighborhood next. We'll call it. We'll do the play-by-play.
It could get physical at some point in this this neighborhood.
I think it already has based on the topic.
We're going to redact some names and redact the location of where I live while explaining a showdown that is taking place.
Showdown in the media with the NHL. The league itself doesn't care what Ivan Provorov elected to do by staying in the locker room instead of going out in warm-ups wearing the Pride Night uniform, the sweater. But in and of itself, Chad, the night, quote-unquote, that they have, these appreciation nights, leads to media members taking attendance, roll call, of who does and does not support this warm-up. And there's, maybe 1,000 people in attendance for this warm-up at the time before you actually get going?
So Matt Regal at OutKick wrote a great piece on this about the NHL basically taking, progressive charities and deciding to partner with them and, to be quote-unquote woke with their messaging and different things like this. Now, some of what they are doing, we ran through the list of charities yesterday. It's not all Pride Night. There's, I joke, but there's an Indigenous People Night. There's Latin Americans in hockey.
Well,
there's
the individual teams
all these
choose what they
different
want
things.
to do.
Yeah, it's performative, I think, is the problem most sports fans have with it. At least it seems very performative.
Mm-hmm.
It's like they're trying to align themselves with what they see with the majority of media, and it just comes across as phony.
Well, they also sell these jerseys.
And their response, though, to Provorov, I have to say, encourages me because they very much took his side and said, we're not going to force anyone to do anything that they don't want to do with this. It's an initiative to bring people into hockey. But I thought Matt Regal said it best. We said, hockey is for everyone. What many don't want to acknowledge is everyone includes Ivan Provorov. That's everyone. So even if you disagree with certain things or your religion conflicts with something, well, that's included in everyone for the sport of hockey.
Yeah, it includes everyone as long as that person agrees with your line of thinking.
They want people to regurgitate their talking points of whatever that may be. I just look at it and think it just rings so hollow. It's so clear what's trying to be done. But I do think that the NHL, with their response to all this, shows me they're probably looking around and thinking, we kind of got ourselves in a little bit of a situation now. That's one guy that's not doing it. But if we continue down this road, there may be more. And it's just the risk is not worth the reward of what's going on, of this performance of showing everyone that you're for everyone. Did the NHL have some problem not allowing people buy tickets to go in the arena before? I've never noticed a problem of thinking,
they are very sensible in their overall process of allowing the teams to determine what they want to and don't support. When I say support, like actually have the nights on the calendar where they're going to do this. It's not the league mandate that you have to do it, and it's certainly they're telling us that they're also not making the players participate in it.
I think what they're telling us with the response is, moving forward, we don't really care as much as maybe we've let on our website and with this night. Could be wrong.
Well, but again, it's up to the individual market to place the care factor on it. It's not up. The league is just saying, do what you want.
Yeah, no, and that's what I laid out. All the different charities represented.
Yeah.
The Hockey is for Everyone initiative. Each member team can pick whatever cause they want and have a specific night for that. It just so happens to be the Philadelphia Flyers chose this as what they wanted to support that night. And then you've got a Russian Orthodox player from Russia who said, yeah, I'm not going to do that. and I'm not going to go out there. And he played in the game. The Flyers won, and then after the game, it becomes a story because he's asked about it. And I understand why he's asked about it from reporters, because it did blow up into a story. I feel like the NHL could have made this an even bigger story if they responded and talked about discipline to Provorov or anything like that. They didn't. I think this thing will probably go away.
Nor did the Flyers.
For that reason. Oh, yeah, his coach, John Tortorella, had his back the entire time.
Yeah.
His teammates, to our knowledge, have his back. So I do think this is probably going to go away. And maybe this hockey is for everyone campaign eventually goes away next season, too.
You can read more about this at OutKick.com. Coming up, we've got the latest injury reports across the NFL for the divisional round. And Prime, Dion, getting it done at Colorado. More on that next. OutKick 360 rolls on.
College football's in trouble. There's a lot of people trying to keep it from happening.
I think it's a general consensus across the college football landscape. We want to play football.
College football is a huge part of the fall. It's a huge part of Americana itself.
It just really felt like people in the country needed college football to just feel a little sense of normal.
Big news from the Big Ten as the conference releasing its 10-game football schedule.
We go home thinking that we're going to be practicing the next day. Everybody gets a text, stay home, everything's canceled.
Big Ten fall football season has been canceled.
We just believe collectively there's too much uncertainty.
I guess what I'm trying to understand, though, Kevin, is that was the same position you had 6 days ago.
The Big Ten is an unmitigated disaster.
There was a ton of confusion. There was presidents saying one thing, there was coaches saying another.
Players had to be silent, coaches had to be silent, ADs had to be silent.
People said, how does what you just did make any sense?
And nobody really knew what the heck happened when they voted to cancel the season.
You make this huge historical announcement, and then Kevin Warren never does a press conference to explain it. It was like a masterclass in how not to handle a crisis.
The word really that was lacking in all this is transparency.
It felt like a lot of stuff was happening behind closed doors.
Even today, we still don't know what occurred.
So you don't tell us parents, that's fine, but you're not telling the young men that it affects.
We have to make a decision to save the season. What about the history books? What about the rivalry games? What about Paul Bunyan's axe? How is that not going to go to a team this year?
This is a failure of epic magnitude. The Big Ten presidents and leaders should be held accountable for the disastrous decisions that they're making.
Then the commissioner doubles down, saying his decision will not be revisited.
And that's the point. It felt like a war was declared on the Big Ten and Kevin Warren.
Everything turned political.
Because if this is medical, then you would have stopped the game of football a long time ago.
I think the Big Ten leaders will tell you that they probably made a mistake in hindsight.
If I had the chance to do it all over last year, I would make the same decisions that we made.
Just like that, the final hour is here. Friday edition. OutKick 360 across the OutKick network. Streaming live at OutKick.com. Coming up, Turf Wars inside Withrow's neighborhood. We have the receipts to go through.
West Side Story is about to happen
That's right.
in my neighborhood.
We've got details on the matchups across the NFL. And, Chad, we're about to do it again. We're about to lead off an hour discussing Colorado football with Deion Sanders.
Before we get to Coach Prime, it's amazing on Fridays to me the level of aggression from drunk guys as they approach our studio.
Yeah.
Like, as the week goes on, they get closer and closer. Right now, there's two guys right here in the glass to our studio, and every time I feel like someone works here because they walk right up to it like they're about to open the door and walk in. On Monday and Tuesday, people are keeping their distance from the door, not sure what to do. They kind of look in and then look away when you make eye contact. And Hutton, by Friday, here at Old Smoky and Yeehaw, I mean, the eye contact is severe. They walk right up to that door, and they stare right at me as I'm looking over there at the door at them. At some point, we'll have to turn a camera around to see what I'm seeing the entire time. But I feel like these guys that are just holding two drinks, or double fisting, are just going to pound right through the glass at some point and come into the studio.
What's odd is for the longest time, we didn't have a lock on the door. And we had zero issues with that. But now that we have a lock on the door.
We had one guy who walked in one time, I remember.
But he thought it was the weigh-in or whatever here.
Well, yeah, no, he just thought it was like another part to go. It was like he was asking someone for directions to go somewhere while we were live on air.
But we had that one fighter who came in thinking that this is where he weighed in. Remember that?
Oh, that's right. Yeah, that was another time. Boxing matches here. You never know what you're going to get on a Friday at 6th and Peabody.
That's right. You can join us with Yeehaw Beer and Old Smoky Moonshine.
But it's amazing to see the level of all the inhibitions kind of go away as the week goes on. And by late Friday afternoon, people are just walking right up to that door.
Deion is getting recruits to walk straight to Colorado with him. He's done it again. He's flipped the number one recruit yet again. Cormani McClain, top corner, headed to Colorado to play for the Hall of Fame corner in Deion Sanders. Chad, the momentum follows him, Sanders. But I am still surprised how often I see the Colorado Buffaloes football program among the top headlines of any sports page you go to. It's already paid off.
It's going to be a huge upset if they're not nationally relevant. And I'm not talking about just from getting headlines in the offseason. If they're not really good in the Pac-12 in the next 2 years. I don't think it's going to happen this year. They got a really tough schedule to start when you look at who they're playing.
Starts with TCU.
Yeah, that part's going to be tough. But, I mean, they have USC early. They have
Oregon.
They have tough games early on next year.
We have the schedule. I mean, TCU, Nebraska.
Yeah, Nebraska, Colorado State's a rivalry game. Oregon, USC. Yeah, I mean, it's going to be a tough start to their season. But the way they're grabbing headlines because of Coach Prime, do we go with Deion Sanders? We need to make an editorial decision on this show. Is it Deion or are we going Coach Prime? We can kind of go back and forth.
That's kind of the point, though, is everyone knows who you're talking about.
Yeah. I also noticed that so Barstool Sports did a show with Travis Hunter.
Yeah.
And then it was revealed that Deion, who worked with Barstool Sports on a show, that part of the reason he ended up going to Jackson State was an NIL deal with Barstool Sports. And then I noticed someone said, I wonder what Barstool is paying this latest player.
Oh, this guy.
Cormani McClain. To go, and Dave Portnoy immediately replied and just said, no comment on what he's paying him to go play for Deion Sanders now. Because we know John Ruiz has one of the most powerful collectives in all of college sports at Miami. So it's not like he wasn't getting paid to go to Miami also. Huge get for Colorado, huge get for Coach Prime. I mentioned watching him on the Manning cast and being blown away with how great he was with the Manning brothers. But you know what else he's smart about doing on that Manning cast? He's got Colorado stuff everywhere. He's got Prime on the sweatshirt. He's got a Colorado helmet behind him. He's in his office with Colorado Buffalo stuff everywhere. So he's a marketing savant, and that marketing is going to pay off big time for Colorado, and they're going to get some dudes. If they get the right coaches, and I like what they've done with some of their staff and the experience they brought in, this is going to be a program to reckon with very, very soon. You get the right players. And granted, it's nowhere to go but up at Colorado based on just how awful they've been. They're going to start winning some big games in Boulder.
Well, how good can his son be at quarterback, too? That's the next question. Because he's the guy.
Yeah, I think that's the part about all this that gives me the most pause. I'm not overly impressed with his son as a quarterback, quite frankly. And I watched him at Jackson State some. I know he's a 4-star recruit. They're going to do better. They're going to do better at quarterback at some point. But this is not going to be the best talent they have.
But no one's
quarterback.
overtaking Shedeur Sanders.
No, he's an upgrade from what Colorado had the last few years. I'm not saying he's bad.
Right.
I'm just
and
not
wasn't
overly.
it JT Shrout who was there?
He was there, but I think he kind of started some and not all the games. He's transferring out along with almost everyone else on the team once Deion took over. But I think my point is Shedeur Sanders is fine. They're eventually going to do better at quarterback than Shedeur Sanders. That's my guess.
One of the assistant coaches for Deion, Tim Brewster, in a spat with our guy, Danny Cannell, where a viral video of Brewster in the room with his new team, Colorado, with the team in the auditorium. If you haven't seen it or heard it, here is Coach Tim Brewster, tight ends coach, with the roster for Colorado.
When I say stand tall, okay, I want you bouncing out of your seat and stand tall. When I say stand tall, get your ass up. Stand tall. Sit your ass back down. Stand tall. We coming. We coming. Raise the goddamn roof. Raise the roof. We coming. We coming. We coming. We coming. If them Colorado buses show up, and 60 minutes of hell coming with it. 60 minutes of hell coming with it. The time is now, man. The time is now. Sit down.
So there's Tim Brewster, and Danny Cannell retweets this and says, if you've ever wondered why college coaches don't work in the NFL, this in a nutshell is why. And he's right. I mean, this in a nutshell is exactly why college coaches that show up in an NFL locker room receive an eye roll and a middle finger on their way out the door because they bring this to them. But Brewster responded and said, hey, Danny, I coached 5 years in the NFL. I'd like to think I was very successful. Just ask Antonio Gates.
Yeah, I think Antonio Gates had more to do with Antonio Gates' success than Tim Brewster did. That's the most intense game of Simon Says I've ever witnessed in my life, is what he opened with. I've played the Simon Says game at basketball camps, and I've seen people who are great at leading Simon Says. To open your introduction to a team with an intense game of Simon Says, because that's what we just witnessed right there was, when I say stand tall, now stand tall.
It's like, what?
It's like, what? I love guys like putting their laptops down and their book bags to get ready to stand up.
Well, I guess I'll stand up.
Here's the other thing about that. If that's your introduction to a team, like there's nowhere to go but down in terms of intensity. So it's just a weird first move. Like,
or is there?
I would rather come in and keep them off guard a little bit, because if that is just your baseline,
your
I'm
tone
going to
setter.
introduce myself by coming in and being a Marine Corps drill sergeant and yelling at the top of my lung at the team. Then that just numbs you to that. So every time I have an interaction with that guy, I'm thinking, oh, this is just what it is, and there's no real response. I would have a much bigger response to coach comes in, talks to you like a man, and is being respectful, and guy in the back is talking to a buddy, or he puts the AirPods in, and coach snaps at that guy. That's the tone setter. Like, that's the one where I'm thinking, oh, man, I thought coach was going to be real nice to us, but he just made an example out of the guy in the back of the room. That's the one that's going to get a bigger response from me, is that, okay, that is telling me that if you do what's expected and you pay attention, you listen, coach is going to be fine with you and treat you with respect. But if you don't, then things may go south. Instead of Tim Brewster walking into an auditorium and screaming at everyone and playing Simon Says.
I don't know how, what do you think he would think if he saw this back on a routine basis? Right? Like, if players want to be coached hard, I don't need the coach acting like the idiot fan sitting in section 314.
Yeah, I would be embarrassed. But I think anytime, if you look back on a video of yourself getting really upset, it's embarrassing to anyone. I would hope that Tim Brewster's embarrassed, but based on his response to our guy Danny Cannell, I don't think there's a lot of embarrassment. That's just who he is. We find it odd. And I also agree with Danny Cannell that approach does not work
And
in the NFL.
That's what you hear, too, is that, you've got the college coaches who come in and try to establish the college atmosphere in an NFL locker room, and they get laughed out of the room. It just does not go over the same way.
Urban Meyer.
But I mean,
I think it's a good example of that.
But even to the small
Matt Rule may have been an example of that.
Yeah, Saban to some regard.
Yeah, Saban. That's a great example because there's plenty of players that played for him that said it's just not going to work based on his personality.
But there were others, that said that they loved playing for him. Jason Taylor, for instance, said he loved whenever Saban was the head coach in Miami. And I do buy into the camp that says if they land Drew Brees instead of New Orleans, it's a different story. But, yeah, I mean, by and large, the college coach transition to the NFL, that's the biggest difference is some of them act more like the fan base instead of the locker room.
Yeah, and it's also this is not to lack discipline. Their disciplined coaches still work, and yelling at players is something that happens all the time. Those things can work. I think there's so many things that are just silly now.
Yeah.
That you can look back like that right there is just silly.
Well, that's old school too.
There's nothing about that. Nick Saban having discipline, but even Nick Saban, there are the stories you hear about Nick Saban that's like, really, dude?
Yeah.
Where he's yelling at the janitor, or he's yelling at someone just to yell at someone, and you're thinking, that's just not. You could still be Nick Saban and cut out a lot of that. I'm sure Nick Saban's wife probably, Miss Terry, tells him that all the time too. And I'm sure he's gotten better about it over the years. You don't have to be that way all the time. Bobby Knight was a great coach. We can ask Dan Dockich about this. If Dan Dockich is going to be honest with us, I'm sure that he could tell us there were plenty of things that Coach Knight did that was just silly and that was way over the top just for the sake of being over the top, right? I feel that way when I watch Tim Brewster, that is this really necessary? I am not some powder puff guy that thinks players shouldn't get yelled at or disciplined or any of that stuff. I just see that as an introduction and think, this is just, it's a waste of time. It's excessive. It's not efficient. I don't understand what point you're trying to prove by coming in and playing insanity Squid Game version of Simon Says in front of your team for the first time.
Well, especially in an era where you can leave a year later if you don't like it. It's more and more rare that we'll see this.
Now, we heard Kirby Smart's pregame speech.
Which he says was not pregame for that game. It was a pregame speech, but it was not for that game.
Well, either way, I'm saying that style can still work, right? I don't know that he's like that in a negative way. That was more of a pump your team up type thing.
For sure.
But it's an interesting question to ponder about where college sports are headed, the mentality of young people of this generation that's playing right now, and what styles are going to prove to be most effective in terms of management and leadership with coaches and players. I'll always argue this, though. Athletes and competitors and players, they want to know the score at all times, and they want to know the expectation.
And where they stand.
Setting standards and setting a time and having someone be somewhere at a certain time, all of those things, that organization is great for young athletes. That's never going to change. So I'm not saying just some setup where the coach is, hey, we're all equal here, and this is a collaboration, and you tell me how long you want to practice, and you tell me how you want to condition, and we're all going to get along and do that. No, guys, even professionals, they want to know what the expectations are. They want guys being honest with them, and they want to know the score, for lack of a better term, at all times. And I think that's never going to change in sports.
What's the score with the Facebook, the Facebook page within Chad's neighborhood?
You know what, Hutton?
Right
I think what we should do when we come back.
Yeah.
We've printed off some Facebook posts from my neighborhood.
I have them right here.
I have asked to redact the names and locations to protect the innocent.
Okay.
That's involved in this story. Although there may not be many innocents in this story of those that are posting on it. But either way, I want to be a good neighbor and not use any names. But what we're going to do, Hutton, when we come back, I am going to lay out what happened when I was alerted to this, and we are going to have a bit of a dramatic reading. Haley Karania of OutKick is in studio with us. She will read for the part of aggrieved mom number one, or Karen. Karen number one will be Haley.
Okay.
Hutton, you're going to play the other parts of people in the neighborhood.
Oh, I have multiple
offended. I think you're going to basically read everything that she's not reading.
Okay.
as agreed mom number one. I'm going to jump in with some bonus material. I have it right here of some peanut gallery people in my neighborhood that jumped in. And I think we create our own scorecard. I think we just scored at the end of it who won this debate. What side are we on? Are we on anyone's side? I got to tell you, I'm asking myself the question right now whether or not I want to continue living in this neighborhood based on what's going on right now.
I think you've already decided.
I think my early vote is we're all losers.
The fact that we're doing this means Chad has decided if he wants to continue to live in this neighborhood.
We're all losers here, and we're all going to have lost for having heard this dispute that happened on the neighborhood Facebook page. But hopefully we will entertain in the process. Is that a good enough description?
That's great. And so are some of these posts. We've got them next on OutKick 360.
As we move past the college football regular season, the postseason, and the playoff championship game, is there, are we going to see, in your opinion, are we going to see the same storyline going into next year, you think, with the same teams? And I'm talking, okay, Bama, Georgia, two teams that are looking for a new quarterback, by the way, in Bama and Georgia. Ohio State is as well. Michigan's going to return J.J. McCarthy. Harbaugh, this NFL nonsense saga comes to an end for another year yesterday. Do you think it's trending towards where, okay, with the playoff expansion coming up too, okay, we got our 4 or 5 teams. You know what I mean? Maybe Clemson gets back in there. There's a few other. But do you feel like Kirby Smart has set himself up now where he's running a dynasty at at Georgia, along with Nick Saban trying to run his own dynasty at Alabama?
Yeah, I mean, I think that was probably the takeaway that everybody had. Every podcast that I listened to after the game, every column that I read, and certainly what I wrote and what I said on my own show, I think we're there, man. And, I think what stands out is, one, it goes like, I think it's easy. And I was one of the people that was critical of Kirby Smart pre-national championship game last year, but they've been elite for about 5-6 years now. I looked up the stat. I can't remember it. I think it was since that title game run in 2018, outside of the COVID year, I think they've won at least 11 games every year. Now, they couldn't get over the hump, and part of it was they ran into really good teams. They ran into a historically great LSU team in 2019. 2018, they obviously had Bama on the ropes in the SEC title game. And so now they're there, but they're there with the confidence of knowing that they can beat anybody in college football. And so it is kind of amazing. They went in an 18-month span from the team that you expected to find a way to lose the big game to now, I think they're the best big game team in college football. I mean, you look at their season, what were their best performances? The national championship game, a season opener against Oregon when we all still had questions of all the talent that they lost, the Tennessee game when Tennessee came in number 1 in the country. And so I think we're there. And then I would also add, from the I would also say being there, and one of the reasons I was so excited this game was in LA, because I host radio on Saturdays, I don't get to cover a lot of games during the season. Just to be around Kirby Smart, to be around those players, I think that standard has been set. And Kirby said it himself. He's like, the biggest thing for us right now is complacency, because we have a chance to be really good again next year as well. So I think they go into next year. I think they should be the favorite. Every sports book I've seen, they are the favorite. But I do think there's some other interesting storylines now that Jim Harbaugh is back with J.J. McCarthy, as you said, for one more year. I think this could be it. He's never going to say it publicly, but he's got his quarterback. Ohio State's young, games at home against Ohio State. And then, like you said, moving parts at Ohio State, Alabama, Penn State's interesting with maybe a quarterback upgrade, even though they lose Sean Clifford. So yeah, I'm excited already about the narratives. But yeah, if you told me on the day of Selection Sunday that Georgia's the number 1 seed, 13-0 off an SEC championship, I wouldn't be surprised by that at all next December.
Aaron, when's the, we've talked about this before. When's the Harbaugh mess just come to an end? I know you just said next year, but man, we cover this sport and we hear things and we hear stuff coming out of the NFL and we hear Harbaugh's interest. And he has interest. Look, if there was a job that was really offering him, and I mean a set in stone offer to leave, I think he would not be the coach at Michigan right now.
OutKick 360 rolls on across the OutKick network. The only thing greater for this next segment would be to actually have these women in studio that we are about to read from.
If these women have a good sense of humor about this, which I'm 50-50 on that being the case.
They won't.
I will happily.
Have you read this? They
I will
won't.
happily invite them in, and we can settle this score live on OutKick 360. By the way, Sweet Home Alabama, Leonard Skinner playing us in from break here. I want to clarify, I do not live in Alabama. I just want that on the record. I'm not going to tell people exactly where I live, but definitely not in the state of Alabama. Just
Haley
want to make that
Carania
clear.
in studio with us from OutKick. Haley, your thoughts just before we get started on the neighborhood turf war that Withrow's in the middle of.
I told Chad this, but I think that he's living the American dream. This is what living in the American suburbs is and should be. This is fighting on Facebook. This is, I mean, I'm living for this right now. I'm kind of jealous.
What was your reaction, Haley, when I initially sent you a screenshot of what was going down? I said, I want you to play the role of Karen number 1 on OutKick 360.
I can channel Karen number 1. This is like a role that I've been born to play. I'm willing to do it. And now I have a feeling that I should start a Facebook group for my apartment complex so I can just start drama. I already do it in the lobby. I should just do it online.
You need to get on that. Also, we're close enough, I think, to you where people could just walk over and we could actually settle these scores that you
100%.
start when you get in there and mix it up with them and get people to fight and then bring them over here and we'll settle it.
Call
and then
him
we'll have a
back up.
boxing night. You know, here at 6th and Peabody, we talked about having the boxing night. So Hutton, here's what happened. Tuesday night, watching some college basketball. A good buddy of mine that lives in the neighborhood. I'll name him. I'll give him his actual first name. My buddy Nick. All right, good
Nicholas.
dude.
Nicholas.
Good dude. Married, father of a son that plays with my daughter. Good guy. Sends me a text. Now, Nick wakes up at like 4 a.m. to go work out every day.
Okay.
So he's asleep by about 8 p.m. I mean, like
Dedicated.
he's 95 years old. And I make fun of him for this all the time. But he's very dedicated to that morning workout. So when he sends me a text at 9:25 p.m., I think it was somewhere around then, I'm thinking, this has got to be good. The text reads simply, bro, go to the neighborhood Facebook page and thank me later. And I'm thinking, oh my. So I go to the neighborhood Facebook. I have not been in this Facebook group. There's been drama in the past. I have not gone to this neighborhood group Facebook page in months at this point. So I go and I read this first post that Haley is about to read for us as Karen number 1. And
Carania.
Hutton, I immediately knew that the 34 replies, we're not going to go through all of them, that were listed underneath it, were all going to be solid gold. Here is that post, courtesy of Haley Carania.
Karen Carania has a nice ring to it. I'm just going to say this, but here's the post. Whoever has the boys on blank lane that are shooting girls in the neighborhood with frozen Orbeez, please talk to your kids. My daughter and her friends came seeking refuge in my backyard from a group of boys shooting them. One was shot in the forehead, others the legs and back, leaving marks. This is not a joke. These guns should not be used without eye protection and not used to attack little girls. If your kid doesn't know how to safely use these toys, then maybe they shouldn't have them. If my kid comes home with wounds again, I will call the police and have them investigate.
Now, ending a Facebook post with the threat to have the police, quote, investigate is a strong first punch. Now, there's a counter punch coming from Karen number 2, is what we'll call the next mom on this list. Now, this was the part I thought about doing this today. I had no idea what Orbeez were. So I was going to go to a store and actually bring in Orbeez and try to show our audience what they are, much less what frozen Orbeez are.
Frozen Orbeez hit harder.
Just think of like a little, pellet, for lack of a better term, right?
BB gun.
Yeah, like
less than a BB gun.
Yeah. You'd say less than getting hit by a BB gun?
I've not been shot by an Orbeez. I have been shot by a BB.
Yeah,
and
we all have.
My guess is because Orbeez exist and BBs don't anymore, it sounds like.
All of us who grew up in the 80s and 90s got shot with BBs many times, but maybe not
I've been
Orbeez.
shot with a BB gun.
How'd it feel?
I mean, not great, but I wouldn't call the police.
Okay.
Haley's like, I'm not nearly as old as you guys, and I got shot by plenty of BB guns. So that was the first post.
Instead of Karen, can I just call this woman Debbie?
Sure.
Okay.
Sure.
It's a good name.
Debbie responds. At first, by the way, Karen Carania's post was
strong.
It was strong, and when you read through it, you're like, yeah, I wouldn't want my kid shot either. But
of course,
the last line is laughable. Police investigation. So Debbie responds, I'd love to have a conversation with you. Respectfully, our boys should not be doing that without the proper eyewear. However, ask your child about how they asked to be shot. Ask her about screaming as if she was in labor while I was on a work call. Then ask about spitting. Oh, and riding a motorized scooter in our yards with no helmet. Then write us back, please. I accept responsibility for my child's actions, but I don't even know where you guys live or who was to be watching your child. That from Debbie in the neighborhood chat.
So we're 2 posts in, one on each side of this turf war battle in my neighborhood, and I think multiple mistakes have been made in these both these quotes. Hutton, you got into it, right? The first one, let's probably say posting publicly on Facebook instead of just going to the person's house or reaching out to them directly may have not been the right way to go about it. But also ending with the threat of involving the police to investigate the children. That was a little strong. Now, I'll say this starts out good. Get that first line again.
I'd love to have a conversation with you.
Right, respectfully.
Respectfully, our boys should not be doing that without the proper eyewear.
The mistakes probably came when she gets mad at the girls for screaming, quote, like they're in labor and interrupting her work call.
Oh, yeah.
Because her kids are shooting these girls with a gun and they're screaming.
Ask your child about how they asked to be shot.
Call.
About how they asked to be shot.
How dare they interrupt that work call? Now, who's next? Are we going back to Karen Carania?
No, there's a third character in this story.
Susan.
We're making these names up, by the way, as we go. These are not real names. Just want to make that clear for everyone in my neighborhood.
Susan, who wasn't asked to even get involved in this. Karen, you can call me the street police because that's who I am. I've been here since our street was being built. I guess she's, indigenous to this area.
By the way, I saw her street being built. My house was actually built before her street existed. And I can say that, yes, that they were original to the street that was built.
We have a bond with the families that only live on our street. It's in all caps for some reason.
You read it in all caps, too, which I appreciate.
Secondly, those yellow pyramid signs that you may or may not see that states it's a dead end, we personally brought those to protect every child in this neighborhood. So you can thank me for that. I don't attest to the fact, the boys are guilty and we have rectified the situation. But I was there today. I was there today when one of the taller girls... When one of the taller girls was trying to get another girl from our street to go with them. She doesn't know these girls, and it seems from the previous post that this is considered to be bullied or intimidation. As mentioned, we can have a conversation. That from Susan.
Karen escalates the situation at this point, and she says to Debbie, I apologize if my kid was riding her Vespa in your yard.
That's a great starter, right? Like, let's go ahead and put
I
out
love
the
that
apology
Chad lives
first.
in an area with Vespas.
The kids have the Vespa.
I live in northern Italy, apparently.
Yes. You charge your car
Can
every day.
kids even ride Vespas? Whatever.
I park my Vespa out here at 6th and Peabody every day when I ride in.
Chad pulls up on his boat.
I just have the weakest horn
dock.
in the world.
Yeah.
Meow, meow, all through my neighborhood. Sorry, continue.
She doesn't know anything about the spitting and says that they were screaming like that because boys were shooting them. Although I'm sorry this interrupted your work call, I don't believe any of this calls for being shot at. I don't understand how we are justifying shooting screaming girls, and it wasn't just my kid. There are at least 4 girls that were shot with injuries that didn't ride a Vespa in your yard. I'm glad next time your kids will be wearing eyewear when they shoot each other with a peace sign emoji. She's out.
May I interject? I have bonus material here. That was very well done, Karen. This comes from just a third party person here that's not on the street, I don't believe, but just on the neighborhood Facebook page, lives somewhere in the neighborhood, who responds to the eyewear comment and says, and I quote, "I don't have any children, but I am an optometrist. Please educate your kids on safety when it comes to the eyes. I have seen far too many examples of kids who have been shot by BB guns, Nerf guns, etc. It's not something you want to take a chance with, especially with someone else's eyes. Also, Orbeez, water beads are super dangerous, life-threatening if ingested, so please watch them around young children who may put things in their mouth." Again, I'm not a parent yet, but would hate to see anything happen to any of the kiddos in our neighborhood. I mean, actually some helpful information there.
The warning sign about Tide Pods as well.
Yeah, from an optometrist. Non-parent, but optometrist weighing in.
It's life
that.
or death in Chad's neighborhood. It
So,
really is.
Those are the posts, right? We can now react to this situation. I'd love to get both of your opinions.
Well, how has this ended?
So it went on 34 posts, and they went back and forth. People would reply. I mean, I went in depth where I'd read replies to the reply.
Oh, yeah.
From the people involved.
Yeah.
And the person who runs the entire Facebook page basically came in and said, "I'm going to take this offline now and let you guys, handle this." I mean, I'll raise my hand and say a couple things. One, of course little boys should not be shooting frozen Orbeez at girls who are passing on the street, right? I totally understand the anger from a mom if her daughter comes home crying with welts on her body from getting shot by something.
Civil War wounds.
Now, again, to each their own. We would not have had this great entertainment had it not been posted on Facebook, right, for the entire neighborhood to see, and now for our entire audience to see. But I probably would have walked up to the house and talked to the kids and the parents and just said, "Hey, let's not shoot other kids with this gun.
Definitely.
If you guys are playing with it, and handle it that way." Because it does sound, Hutton, like the lady who responded that was in charge of the boys that were shooting the girls,
Debbie,
she would have been understandable, right, with that whole situation, and probably would have agreed with the mom.
Debbie
and gotten onto
knows
her own
how
kids.
these girls asked to be shot.
Yeah, but Debbie was on a work call.
These girls asked for it.
Debbie was on a work call, and she had no idea what her boys were doing.
Well, then
So how did she know that the girls were asking for it?
So
ask how they wanted to be shot.
Before you guys truly weigh in on this, I mean, where this led to was like side allegations against both. Like some people would chime in and say, "I've had issues with those boys." One guy, I think I may have it here in my bonus content. Here it is. Yeah. This is from a gentleman in the neighborhood. Says, "Hi all, I live on the street and was outside when part of this was happening. My wife got hit with a pellet herself by accident. I spoke to some of the boys and told them not to shoot other people and how someone could lose an eye by accident." The optometrist approves of that. "We'll make sure parents are aware and kids learn from this. I would also ask that the parents of the kids who drive the motorized moped in the hood would ask their kids not to drive them through neighbors' yards."
We're in the streets. We're
Anderson
in the hood.
Cooper's going to show up
So
live.
that's just a good example.
Pellets
of,
flying everywhere.
People would chime in on either side, right? "I saw the kid shooting. That's wrong." Spoke to them, saw what they're talking about. And then someone else would then say, "I've been bothered by the girls riding through the neighborhood or through our yards also." Kind of, going into either corner.
If I may.
Absolutely. You may.
Was a Withrow involved in this at all?
So There's a young Withrow that was up the street.
Okay.
But we asked her, we had no idea. She said nothing about it. She just came home. She was playing with 4 or 5 girls. I don't believe it was these girls.
It wasn't
and
the
she
tall
came
one?
home and she just said, well, parents came out and they all went home, so I just came home too. And she's like a house behind us, 2 houses behind us, so close. She had no knowledge of this. So that's all we can say is.
Or did she not want to get in trouble?
Maybe. I don't think.
I don't know.
She's not a very good liar yet. I'm sure she'll probably develop that in her teenage years. But she's not a good liar yet, so I don't think she was lying to us. She had no idea. We asked if anything was going on with parents or someone getting shot with something, and she had no clue what we were talking about. So she got out before the real battle started.
I don't, based on how tough I know she is, I don't think she would complain about being shot with this.
Oh, no, I joked that she probably would have been firing both pellet guns in the air as she comes home a conquering hero after taking it from the boys.
Yes.
Probably would have been what happened. But nonetheless, she was not a part of it. So your thoughts on who's right, who's wrong, are we all wrong here, and how do we settle this dispute?
Haley, your thoughts?
I absolutely think that everyone in this situation is a loser, like Chad said in the beginning. I think this should be handled in person, not on Facebook. But I also grew up in a tough love household. So if I came home with, Orbeez shot in my leg or something, my mom would have been like, well, you should have been home studying. So if you're not home studying and you get shot with something, get off the streets. But that's just me. So
this makes me feel like, Chad, you're actually in the right neighborhood to raise your children. Because
developing character.
I don't read a bunch of betas in this.
That's a good point.
That is a good point.
This is a sign that you're in the right spot because of the alphas that are ingrained into this neighborhood, right?
Maybe the top alpha being the third-party person who designated themselves as the police of the street. I am the cop on this street.
They're
on this
not
block.
playing these, games, right? They're not inside. They're outside shooting these Orbeez.
It's a very good kid group about being outside and playing in our neighborhood, yes. Which I appreciate, too.
I miss the stories of, we would have, growing up, I'm sure you did, Roman candle wars.
Oh, yeah.
Welts for days. Did you come home and complain about it? No, but I did recommend how I wanted to be shot. So
what is a Roman candle? What?
Roman candle wars, where
this is another sign that it's a different generation we're dealing with here.
I used to
Haley.
play Manhunt.
So
did you ever have bottle rocket?
Flag.
Like throw bottle rockets at people?
No.
Yeah, this is probably more of a
light
southern
a
thing.
bottle rocket and you point it and shoot it.
We would take PVC pipe and shave it off and make little guns. We'd put
like
duct tape around the bottom, and we'd drop bottle rockets into the PVC pipe and use it as a weapon and fire bottle rockets at people.
For those listening, I do not recommend this, right?
No,
it's going to say on the packaging.
In fact, the optometrist is probably about to call into the show right now and tell us why we shouldn't be doing
the Roman candle, like
she'd be
4th
right.
of July, the Roman candles that shoot off like 8 at a time, you can hold it and point it, and it'll just,
Yeah, not the smartest thing. We wouldn't recommend that.
Yeah, but I'm alive.
If my kids were doing that, I'd be upset, right? I mean, these are things I would tell them not to do it.
I think it builds character. I think it's a teaching moment. Like, hey, don't shoot people. Be safe about it. But I think that we should let this go.
I also think I have to feel like this was something maybe that was brewing, that was building up for a little while, to take it to the level of public shame. That I'm going to go and let everyone in this neighborhood know exactly what's happened, and I want that person to be shamed instead of just going to the person. That maybe this was something building for a while?
Here's the next phase, the next staircase. Step up. What happens to you now in this neighborhood, Chad?
That's a great question. I've actually received a text from a mom in my neighborhood. I've not read it yet.
Was it
maybe
Karen or
if it's
Debbie?
good. No,
I think
if
you
it's
need
good,
to read it.
It's someone who's very close with two of the Karens.
Picture a beer that your name is
involved.
already mentioned in the Facebook group right now.
I think if this person is texting me already, I'll read it during the break and decide whether or not it's
Okay.
I can actually read it on air. I might, but I think that half the people will have a sense of humor and find it funny. There's probably going to be 1 or 2 people that take some sort of offense to it. To which I say, don't post your stuff on Facebook pages. I don't care if it's a group page or whatever. Just go to the person. And then if they offend me enough, I'll just use their name. No, I'm kidding. I would never do that. I'm always a good neighbor to everyone around, so I don't think they'll have a big issue with it.
Chad's going to have Karen, Debbie, and Susan knocking on his door at like whatever time you get home tonight.
We also are planning on building a different house in a different spot, and I think this will expedite that process. So I'm trying to get the missus to get going quicker on let's go. Let's get out. And I think this might help it.
Stop living in Kosovo
Yeah,
and move to...
if our children are getting shamed,
Yeah.
you know, if they're getting spat at every time they walk down the street, that'll
Ask
probably
about
help.
the spinning.
Go quicker. Yeah.
It's very close proximity.
I say all this, then something's going to happen to one of my kids. I'm just going to go immediately to the Facebook page and post. To the parents that live on this street, I have a message for you.
You can launch a 360 investigation. I'll stalk all these people on Facebook.
There may be some follow-up here. Look, I think there's also a chance that someone's going to maybe we'll have to blur their face out and change their voice or something, but may want to come in and
Chad,
discuss.
I'm just telling you that I respect your neighborhood more now. I don't see a bunch of Greg Wyshynskis living with you here.
No. This is not an E.J. Raddick, Greg Wyshynski type neighborhood. Now, in terms of like keyboard warrior stuff, you got a little bit of that like you do with those guys, but I'm honestly surprised, not knowing closely or anything, but knowing some of the people involved, that they didn't just march up and have a conversation right away.
Ride up on their Vespas.
Yeah. Now, the thought of a bunch of neighborhood girls riding up on Vespas, all on matching Vespas to fight, just one after the other in a line to the house, is pretty funny.
Haley, thank you as always.
Of course.
We couldn't have done this without you.
Thanks for your contribution.
Karenia. Maybe the role continues because the Facebook group's not going away anytime soon.
I hope someone just posts the entire video of this on that just no comment onto the Facebook page. Just here it is. Here it is discussed for everyone to see.
Have your guy do it.
I do want to follow up, though, and see how this was resolved. Like I hope that with all of this, if someone catches wind of what's gone on here in my neighborhood, that it leads to them telling me this is how it had actually resolved in a peaceful way. I hope I can report that. If I can't report that, it's not going to be good for the neighborhood or me, but it's going to be great for the show.
It will be.
It's going to be great for the show.
Coming up, the storyline we are talking about on Monday. We've got it for you next on OutKick 360.
And how long after 9/11 does your unit, the 160th SOAR, which is the most elite helicopter pilots in the world, how long does it take for you guys to figure out, okay, a plan's being set in motion, we're going to Afghanistan? Was it within days? Was it within weeks?
It was within hours.
Within hours.
So we drive back that night, the battalion commander and I, and the next morning I'm sent down in a 15-passenger van with a bunch of other planners to Tampa, Florida. And we're to plan America's response, as far as the rotary wing side of it. And by October 3rd, I was in the country of Uzbekistan preparing to do personnel recovery for the bombing campaign that was about to kick off.
And this is depicted in the movie 12 Strong. Correct me if I'm wrong, where you guys are going to fly in from Uzbekistan. This is what's known as the horse soldiers. This is going to kind of be the first wave. Is that correct?
That is correct, yeah. So initially we're there for, I want to say about 2 weeks of bombing. And then there is no further plan that we know of. And then all of a sudden, 5th Special Forces Group rolls in. Their commander takes over the task force. We're in Task Force Dagger out of K2 Air Base, Karshi-Kanabad, and he wants a briefing on our capabilities. And so we sat down and we started talking to him about, the mountains and the distances that we can or can't fly, the way the weather is and all these things. And he's like, gee, I wish somebody had told us that ahead of time, And ironically, when I was in Tampa, they were one room over and nobody ever connected us, because it just wasn't considered important. But now it was, especially as they heard that, the mountains were, 20,000 feet and that the weather was horrible and all these things. And so we tell them what we can do. And he goes, well, you guys are going to start doing a UW campaign, which is unconventional warfare. That's where you link up individual operational detachments or ODAs up with factions of the Northern Alliance, which were the allies that we were trying to coordinate with. So it went from there.
So, and I'm glad you brought up the 20,000 feet thing, because I had it in my notes. I wanted to ask you, in the movie, it's depicted that helicopters had never flown that high, and they weren't sure whether or not it could be done. Was that how it actually worked in real life, that you guys didn't know if the altitude was even workable?
Yes and no, but not for the reasons that you might think. So helicopters had flown that high. Chinook helicopters routinely fly at 25,000 feet in Alaska, right over the mountains there. They do the rescue mission at the top of that. Was at Mount McKinley, I think. And so it is possible, but using carrying a usable load, going the distance that we need to go as far as, because we had to trade off fuel for cargo, if you will, people. Right. And so the math didn't work out, and we're wearing supplemental oxygen, or how long is that going to last, per console for the people you got on board. So there's a lot of calculations that have to go into this that, really weren't operationally proven. I operated in Colorado all the time, but that's nothing compared to Afghanistan.
Divisional round kicking off tomorrow. Chad, how much would you guess each player's paid the same, by the way, in the postseason, each player makes for performing in the divisional round? It's not as much as you think.
I don't know. I'm not going to have a guess. I don't want to say a guess because I'll sound stupid. How much?
The most that a player can make is $319,000 if you play all the way through the Super Bowl. Individual. So this week it's worth $46,500. That's what you're making.
Not bad. Not bad for a day's work.
Brock Purdy, his base salary is $782,000 this year. Dak Prescott, $18.4 million.
And they
That's
both
the
get to
head-to-head
play
matchup.
on the same field in
For
a divisional round game,
$46,500.
and that pay does not matter for this one
I'm always
game.
fascinated by the CBA
That
and
is
how
crazy.
this works for both. So matchups coming up. The storyline we are talking about on Monday. For me, you know where I'm going with Cincinnati and Buffalo. All the talk is about Josh Allen and how they are on their path to winning Super Bowl 57. Buffalo's been that team prior to week 1. The team we have overlooked the most is Cincinnati, because the discussion has been about the Rams and how they fell off a cliff from their Super Bowl win. And Joe Burrow, to me, is the storyline on Monday, because he's about to run it back and do it again, where he's back in the AFC Championship game, back against Patrick Mahomes, and the betting public's going to back him, where right now everyone's backing Josh Allen. I think Burrow's the topic on Monday.
So I'm just going to go ahead and do it, and because I already bet on it. I think the Giants are going to go to Philly and win. I think every year there's a number 1 seed who goes down in the divisional round.
Last year.
Yep, and I think that this year, it was the Packers and the Titans a year ago. I think this year it's going to be one number 1 seed going down. It ain't going to be the Kansas City Chiefs.
Okay.
I think the Giants are not going to get beaten 3 times in 1 year. They're playing well. They're going to go to Philly and pull off the outright upset, and the Eagles will be one and done, and that's going to be the big talking point come Monday. I like your bet, Hutton, on Cincinnati. I'm rooting like heck for the Bills, given everything that place has gone through this year. So I hope that doesn't happen. I could see it happening, but I'm going to go ahead and go out on a limb. I've been going back and forth in this game all week. Giants get it done and win on the road and beat Philly, knock them out.
So it's easy to find the reports on social media, and you can see multiple outlets with the reaction from the Jets locker room when Zach Wilson was benched. And Dov Kleiman, you can read it OutKick, report, after the 10-3 loss to the Patriots midseason, the Jets locker room, quote, rejoiced that the team decided to bench quarterback Zach Wilson in favor of journeyman Mike White. When Wilson replaced White weeks later, multiple teammates, quote, openly grumbled in meetings. And all of this is coming through Zach Blatt. Well, an update to this story. Zach Wilson was, quote, and this is through Jordan Schultz, late to meetings, screwing around at meetings, and not having the right attitude. Quote, there will be a mutiny if Zach Wilson was QB1 again. It's not going to happen. That from our guy Jordan Schultz from The Score on with Pat McAfee. There will be mutiny if Zach Wilson is QB1 again. That means Zach Wilson's not going to be QB1, QB2, QB3, or 4 for the New York Jets for much longer.
I'm just shocked at the level of disaster Zach Wilson has been.
What could
we
you
saw it on the field, but this surprises me. Showing up late to meetings, goofing off
that
in
doesn't
meetings. Boy, that sounds awful for him. Who knew
but
it
that
was
doesn't
this bad?
sound like Robert Saleh. Like you could say whatever you want about Zach Wilson. That doesn't sound like Robert Saleh to me, and the vibe he portrays.
No, it doesn't. But to throw out something, and we have Jordan Schultz on this show all the time too, to say mutiny would happen if he was back.
But if I said Cliff Kingsbury, this was quarterbacks are showing up late with Cliff. Okay, but not with Robert Saleh. I don't see routinely late. To me, that's just kind of a basic answer to explain why the guy's not.
It's also very vague in saying showing up late to meetings. Maybe he was late to one meeting. Maybe goofed off in 3 or 4 more. Who knows? But that's not good.
Chad, the reaction from the neighborhood.
Well, I've heard from one mom in the neighborhood who I'm friends with who is not angry with me at all. But I will say this. I was sent a video of a Ring camera of the incident in question, and it sounds horrific. It sounds like I live in Kosovo, circa mid-'90s. It's awful. So I kind of changed my opinion of this and think anyone who defends the boys in this deal should not have defended the boys.
Well, it's not how it sounds.
Now I can
it's
almost
what
understand.
happened here.
Now I can understand the mom immediately taking this public and going to the Facebook page with it a lot more than I did before. It's crazy. You guys heard it. Like it sounds like
it's an automatic
weapons
it's an
that
air
are being
rifle.
discharged. Yeah, it's crazy. And then just the screams of young girls as the weapons are going off. I mean, it's nuts.
I mean, yeah. I mean, if I were having a business meeting, I'd be pissed off too.
Yeah. Now, again, I know what my reaction would have been. And if my daughter ran home crying with Welt saying that, first off, I am walking up there and putting the fear of God in the children that are involved. I'm probably ripping guns from their hands, throwing them, and then I'm saying something to the parents on top of that. But first step would be make the children fear you. That's what I would have gone about. You've heard about Big Bad Chad in my neighborhood. Oh, yeah. I'm willing to bet some of these boys that were the perpetrators were a part of that little gang that I used to play football with back in the day.
I know.
They'll learn.
Real quick.
They'll learn one way or another.
Josh Allen, turnover prone, and then he wasn't whenever Brian Daboll was the OC, coached it out of him. MVP-like season in 2021. Daniel Jones, NFL leading 65 picks prior to 2022. Now, Allen leads the NFL in turnovers. Jones has just 5 interceptions. Will that play a factor this weekend? We'll react to it on Monday for OutKick 360.